Good morning. I wanted to welcome you to this edition of the church. It's ecclesiology, it's theology, and what we're going to begin today on a topic of the structure of Pentecostalism and some of the thoughts that come from it. Really, I want to look at one major thing, and that's sort of the decentralized authority, organization, and educational systems that are within the Pentecostal tradition. And as a way of sort of beginning our discussion, I want to talk a little bit about Vatican I. In Vatican I, which was a council of the Catholic Church in 1871, the Roman Catholic Church rallied around an extremely strong organizational hierarchy, and it set the tone for what had already been a very ritualized and structured style of ecclesiology. Perhaps one of the most infamous things that came out of this council regarding its authority and organization was the concept of papal infallibility. What they essentially said was that the Pope was infallible in relationship to his morality and also his teaching when he was teaching from the chair, literally ex cathedra, meaning from the chair. The implication was that the statements the Pope was delineating would become church doctrine, and it had sort of a sense of imperativeness that it be followed. While many staunch Catholics don't necessarily agree with this theological emanation from Vatican I today, they are extremely loyal in following Catholic dogma. Now really contrast that with the conceptual Protestant Pentecostal model and understanding the authority of the church and its typical representing organization. You don't hear things like, my pastor's teaching is infallible. And if you're hearing that, that's great. Send those people my way, okay? I'd love to have them in some of the forums in which I speak. But, the contrasting of that, it sort of shows us a couple things. In typical evangelical fashion, the Pentecostal style of theology is gathered around several main faith statements. But beyond that, it leaves large room for theological differences and opinions on a wide variety of issues. As a matter of fact, the authority of the church and the voices of its leaders are often chosen on style rather than on content. Like most free church models, there will on an occasion be an issue with which the Pentecostal church takes a position. Nonetheless, these have less authority in matters related to the everyday warp and woof of the church. And one can very quickly see that in matters of theology and doctrine, the authority is not nearly as strict. This makes sense if one thinks of the liquid style of Pentecostal movements. They tend to gravitate toward local autonomy rather than denominational structures. This means the Pentecostal church models tend not to standardize its educational requirements nor its specific models. You can see how this is both great for quickly changing ministry environments, but also dire for the reinforcing of authority of the church in matters related to difficult situations. It also makes it easier for bad teaching to flourish within the local church. And we're going to pick this up because hopefully, if you're a pastor out there, we want to sort of see if we can't bolster and find ways of getting at dealing with those difficult situations in a context of a church going public that sort of is willy-nilly will just, at the drop of a hat, change what church it's going to because somebody's addressing a behavioral modification in their life.